My brother slept with my wife and my mom helped cover it up. I got revenge by exposing them and cutting them off forever. Sup Reddit. Never thought I'd be posting here, but I need to get this off my chest. I got completely blindsided by the 3 people who were supposed to have my back: my wife, my brother, and my own mother. Here's how it all went down. I, a 28-year-old male, have been working as a software engineer for the last 5 years. I started at a small tech startup and worked my way up to senior developer. We build enterprise solutions, payment systems, CRM platforms, that kind of stuff. Not the sexiest work in the world, but it paid enough for me to buy a decent 2-bedroom house in a nice neighborhood 2 years ago. I bought it before marriage. My company might not have the name recognition of Google or Apple, but we're solid, 90,000 base with annual bonuses that usually hit around 15 to 20,000. Health benefits that actually cover things, 401k matching, the kind of stability most guys my age are still dreaming about. My boss, Chester, a 42-year-old male, took me under his wing when I first started. He's this old-school coder who transitioned to management, but still keeps his hands dirty with code. He didn't just teach me coding best practices, he showed me how to navigate company politics, how to negotiate my salary. He got me an extra $12,000 on my last promotion, and how to manage client expectations without promising the impossible. Then my wife, now ex, Megan, a 26-year-old female, walked into my life at a friend's house party 3 years back. She was this gorgeous blonde who worked as a nurse at the local hospital, specializing in pediatric care. We had this instant chemistry that everyone noticed. One of those connections that feels like you've known someone for years. What first caught my attention was how she lit up talking about her job. Not just surface-level stuff, but the technical aspects of pediatric care. She could explain complex medical procedures in a way that made sense even to a tech guy like me. Smart, dedicated, and invested in her career. Exactly what I was looking for. We dated for a year before I proposed. She cried, said yes, and we had a small wedding at her parents' church, just 50 or so people, close friends and family. I spent 2 months' salary on the ring, a 2.1-carat diamond with a platinum band. For context, my younger brother Ed, a 24-year-old male, has always been the golden child. 4 years younger, but somehow always the center of attention. Better looking, better with people, better at charming our mom into getting whatever he wanted. He played varsity baseball in high school. I was the chess club kid who built websites in my free time. Classic mama's boy situation. I was the quiet, responsible one who worked hard but never quite measured up in mom's eyes. Dad was always fair with both of us, but Ed was definitely mom's favorite. That dynamic never changed. The contrast between us was almost comical at family gatherings. Thanksgiving 3 years ago, Ed showed up 2 hours late, no side dish like he promised, but with some girl he'd met the night before. Instead of being annoyed, Mom fussed over both of them. While I had been there since morning helping prep the turkey, Dad just shook his head and poured me an extra glass of water when Mom wasn't looking. Dad's a retired mechanical engineer, logical, methodical, plays by the rules. He taught me how to change oil in my first car, how to fix a leaky faucet, all that practical dad stuff. He never understood my coding work, but respected that I'd found a solid career. Mom's a former elementary school teacher who retired early when Dad's engineering firm took off. She always had a soft spot for Ed, who she called her sensitive artistic soul. After college I went straight into coding, while Ed bounced around between jobs. He'd work somewhere for a few months, get bored, then quit. Always had some story about toxic management. Meanwhile, his credit card bills somehow became Mom and Dad's problem. Twice, I bailed him out of minor legal trouble. Once for driving with an expired license and once for trespassing at an ex-girlfriend's apartment. It cost me nearly $3,000, which he promised to pay back as soon as things turned around. Eventually, I helped him get a position at my company in the sales department. Chester, my boss, was hesitant. He'd met Ed at our company Christmas party the year before and wasn't impressed. But I vouched for him, said I'd keep him in line. Ed had the charm for it, and I figured having him there would give him some stability. Plus, family looks out for family, right? The sales job at our company came with a $65,000 base plus commission. Not bad for someone with Ed's spotty resume. I spent 3 weekends coaching him on our products, the industry terminology. I told him this was his chance to build something real. He seemed grateful, said all the right things. Chester gave me one of those "I hope you know what you're doing" looks when I introduced them. Megan and I settled into married life pretty well. Our relationship wasn't Hollywood movie material, but it was solid. We talked about starting a family, maybe in a year or two. I spent weekends working on the house. Installed a new kitchen island. Built a deck in the backyard. All that homeowner stuff. Megan decorated the place, making it look like something out of those home design magazines. I put about $20,000 into home improvements over that first year. New hardwood flooring in the living room, upgraded the master bathroom with a rainfall shower and heated floors, landscaped the backyard. Every penny I put in was raising the property value, plus giving us a place we both loved. The first year was good. We had our routines: Sunday morning pancakes, Wednesday date nights, the occasional weekend trip to her parents' lake house. We hosted game nights with friends, took a cooking class together. All that couple stuff you're supposed to do. We seemed happy. About a year in, I got assigned to a major project at work, rebuilding the payment system for a big hospital chain. The irony isn't lost on me now. I was working longer hours, often coming home after Megan was asleep. Weekend work became normal. The project was supposed to last 3 months but stretched to 6. I started missing those Sunday pancakes, those Wednesday date nights. The project was a career maker. Successfully implementing a new payment system for a $2 billion company would put me on the fast track for a senior architect position. Bigger salary, stock options, more control over which projects I worked on. I explained all this to Megan, and she seemed to understand. She even brought me dinner at the office a few times during those first weeks of overtime. During this time, Megan made a new friend at work, Alexis, this travel nurse from Seattle who was doing a 6-month rotation at our hospital. Alexis was everything Megan wasn't: single, carefree, kind of wild. Suddenly, Megan was going out for girls' nights with Alexis, and coming home with stories about clubs I didn't know existed in our city. I was too busy with my project to really notice how much things were changing. Things started feeling weird about 4 months before things imploded, right around when my big project was wrapping up. The system was finally launched, and I was looking forward to getting back to normal life with Megan. But somewhere along the way, normal had shifted. Megan's schedule got unpredictable. She'd always been consistent with her hospital shifts. 3 12-hour days, then 4 days off. But suddenly she was picking up extra shifts and going out with TO workers more often. When I asked, she'd say the hospital was short-staffed, or that her friend Amber was going through a breakup and needed support. I checked our bank statements one night and noticed Megan had been withdrawing $200 to $300 in cash every week for the past 2 months. When I asked about it casually, she said something vague about preferring cash for small purchases and girls' nights out. It made sense on the surface, but it was new behavior. I tried to reconnect, suggested we take a weekend trip to celebrate my project being done. She said she couldn't get the time off. I offered to cook her favorite dinner. She texted last minute saying Alexis needed her help with something. A rational person might have connected these dots sooner, but I was still operating on trust. 6 years of building enterprise systems had trained me to look for multiple data points before declaring a bug. I needed more evidence. Then there was the phone stuff. She'd be texting constantly with this little smile on her face, but the second I walked in the room, phone flipped over. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd say just Amber, or work group chat. After I got Ed the sales job at my company, he started coming to office happy hours more. Megan would show up too, saying she wanted to support both of us. There was this one night at Barley's where I got stuck talking to a client who showed up unexpectedly. I was across the room for maybe 45 minutes. When I finally broke free, I found Megan and Ed in this deep conversation in a corner booth, heads almost touching. They jumped a little when I walked up. Ed immediately launched into a story about a potential lead at the hospital where Megan worked, how they were discussing an in with the procurement department. It made sense on the surface. What didn't make sense was how Ed's hand lingered on Megan's arm a beat too long, or how Megan's cheeks were flushed in that way I recognized from our early dating days. But again, my own brother, my own wife. I filed it away as an anomaly, not a pattern. Ed started showing up at our place unannounced too. He'd bring Megan these little gifts, her favorite coffee from that specialty shop downtown, fancy chocolates or candles she liked. When I thanked him for being thoughtful, he'd say, "Just looking out for my sister-in-law." I actually thought it was nice at the time. Freaking clueless. At work, Ed was actually doing well in sales, hit 115% of his quota 3 months in a row, started dressing better, seemed more focused. I was secretly proud that my helping him had paid off. Coworkers would congratulate me on straightening Ed out, and I'd feel this misplaced sense of brotherly accomplishment. Then, about 2 months after, Megan started getting sick in the mornings. I'd hear her in the bathroom at 6 a.m., the shower running to mask the sounds. One morning, I got up to check on her, held her hair back while she threw up. I suggested maybe she was pregnant, and she freaked out, like genuinely panicked, said it was just a stomach bug going around the hospital. She immediately scheduled a doctor's appointment but didn't want me to go with her, said it was nothing to worry about. I'd been tracking her cycle on my calendar. We were supposedly trying for a baby after all. She was 2 weeks late, which had never happened before. I didn't press her on it though, figured she'd tell me when she was ready. Maybe she wanted to be sure before sharing the news. My friend Kevin, who works in hospital administration, not at Megan's hospital, met me for drinks around this time. He asked how things were going, and I mentioned Megan's mysterious stomach bug. "Morning sickness, bro?" he said with a wink. I told him Megan denied it, and he got this weird look on his face. "You two still trying?" When I said yes, he just nodded and changed the subject. Later that night, he texted me, "Hey man, not trying to cause trouble, but how's Ed doing at your company?" I replied that he was doing fine, hitting his sales targets. Kevin never explained why he asked. Around this time, Mom started acting weird too. She'd call Megan directly instead of calling our home phone like usual. When I'd be around during these calls, Megan would say things like, "Yes, I got that recipe," or "I'll check that sale." But the conversations seemed longer than they needed to be. Once, I walked in while they were on speaker, and Mom quickly said, "Oh, Josh is home, we'll talk later." Mom had always liked Megan, but suddenly they had this new closeness. They'd go shopping together, had inside jokes I wasn't part of. Mom even gave Megan a family heirloom necklace that had been promised to my future wife since I was a kid. When I mentioned being surprised by this, Mom said, "Well, she is your wife now, isn't she?" Something in her tone felt off. Everything fell apart on a Thursday in April. I was working from home while Megan had a shift at the hospital. I'd made plans to surprise her with her favorite takeout for dinner when she got home, hoping to reconnect after weeks of feeling distance between us. Around lunchtime, I got an email notification that a furniture delivery I'd been waiting on was scheduled for tomorrow. I needed to confirm the time slot but couldn't find the original confirmation in my inbox to reply to. We shared a desktop computer in our home office that we both used, Megan for her nursing continuing education and me for personal projects. I was logged into my email account, but remembered Megan sometimes organized my emails when using the computer. She was big on inbox zero, while I let emails pile up. I figured maybe she'd seen it and moved it to a folder, so I logged into her email to see if she'd forwarded it there. That's when I saw an email thread between her and my mom with the subject line, "Don't let Josh find out." My stomach dropped. I sat there staring at that subject line for what felt like forever. There was this voice in my head saying, "Close the browser, respect her privacy," but a louder voice saying, "WTF is this about?" I started reading through the thread, hands shaking, and it was like getting punched in the face repeatedly. Emails going back 3 months between my mom and Megan, discussing how to hide Megan's affair with Ed. The earliest emails were vague. Mom asking Megan if she was sure about this path and warning her to be more careful around Josh. But they quickly became explicit. Mom was actually giving her advice on how to cover it up, when to claim hospital shifts, what excuses to use, even offering her house as a meeting place when Dad was out golfing. "Frank always plays 18 holes on Thursdays, so you have at least 4 hours." One email read. Mom had created a detailed schedule of when Dad would be out of the house for Megan and Ed to use. My own mother, plotting behind my back. Then the bomb. The latest emails were about the pregnancy. Megan was 2 months pregnant, confirmed by her doctor, and they weren't sure if it was mine or Ed's. The timing overlapped with both of us. There was an email with Megan panicking after I suggested the morning sickness might be pregnancy. My own mother was telling my wife to pass it off as mine either way, saying Josh would be a better father anyway, and what he doesn't know won't hurt him. The entire conversation read like a conspiracy novel. There were timestamp-specific alibis, contingency plans, even a shared calendar where they tracked my work schedule and planned their meetups accordingly. The systematic nature of it all was what got me. This wasn't just an impulsive mistake, it was a calculated, ongoing deception involving the three people who were supposed to love me most. I felt physically sick. I sat at the computer for what must have been hours, reading these emails. Every single one was more devastating than the last. I kept hoping to find something, anything, that would tell me this was all a misunderstanding, a sick joke. Something other than what it was. But no, it was painfully clear. I took screenshots of everything and saved them to a flash drive. Then I printed out the most incriminating ones and put them in a folder. I called Chester. I couldn't think straight. I needed someone level-headed. "You need a lawyer," he said. "Now. Don't confront them yet." Chester knew a good attorney. His second divorce had been complicated. He made the call right there from my living room, put it on speaker. "Sarah Jacobson, divorce attorney." Since we lived in a fault state and I had clear evidence of infidelity, Sarah said I was in a strong position. The fact that I had bought the house before marriage meant it wouldn't be considered marital property. Same with most of my investments and savings. She advised me to secure my finances immediately. So Chester drove me to the bank. I moved most of our joint funds into a separate account, leaving enough in the joint account to avoid claims of financial abandonment. I left exactly $5,000 in our joint account, enough to show I wasn't trying to financially strand her, but not enough to fund a new life with my brother. The rest, about $38,000, went into an individual account under just my name. I also called my investment firm and verified that my premarital assets, about $115,000 in various funds, were properly documented as separate property. By the time Megan came home that night, I had already set things in motion. Sarah was drafting divorce papers. Chester had helped me regain some composure. I didn't confront Megan that night. I was still in shock, and I needed to think strategically. "How was your shift?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "Exhausting," she said, detailing some fictional emergency room crisis. I watched her lie to my face, thinking about the emails where she described meeting Ed at my mother's house that very day. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal while my entire life was imploding. She asked why Chester's car had been in our driveway earlier. Apparently the neighbors had mentioned it. I said we'd been discussing a work project. Another lie to add to the pile. Over the next few days I acted normal while setting everything in motion. I'd go to work, make small talk with Megan in the evenings, even watched our usual Thursday night show together, all while dying inside. I gathered all my important documents and moved them to a safety deposit box. I froze our joint credit cards. I even installed small cameras in our common areas. Totally legal since it was my house. Chester helped me set them up while Megan was at work. "Just in case they try to take or destroy anything," he advised. Kevin from hospital administration texted to check in. Turns out he'd seen Megan and Ed together at a restaurant weeks ago, looking more intimate than in-laws should. He'd been trying to find a way to tell me. I thanked him for trying, told him I'd figured it out on my own. My plan started forming on Sunday night. Megan was in the shower when a text notification popped up on her iPad on the coffee table, from Ed, saying he couldn't wait to see her tomorrow at Mom's. The betrayal was happening literally every day, right under my nose. That's when I decided on the dinner plan. I called my dad Monday morning and asked if he could have a family dinner at our place that weekend. Told him I had some good news to share. "Are you sure you want to host? Your mom and I can do it," he offered. "No, I insist," I said, thinking about how perfect it would be to confront them all on my territory. I invited Ed and my parents and told Megan to prepare for a special dinner. She seemed nervous but agreed. I could see the tension in her shoulders when I mentioned Ed was coming. She texted constantly that day, probably coordinating stories with him and Mom. In the days leading up to the dinner, I met with Sarah twice more. She had drafts of the divorce filing ready. Sarah called Thursday with an update. The divorce papers would be ready Friday morning. I picked them up during my lunch break, the manila envelope burning a hole in my backpack all afternoon. The day of the dinner, I took the afternoon off work to prepare everything. Food ordered from this nice Italian place downtown. No way I was cooking. Divorce papers in a manila envelope, and a folder of emails in a larger envelope for my dad. The camera in the dining room was recording, just in case things got out of hand and I needed proof later. I had another surprise ready too. I'd cashed out some stock options and had a cashier's check for $10,000 made out to my dad. The exact amount I knew my parents had recently loaned Ed to pay off his credit cards. I figured Dad should get his money back before the family imploded. My parents arrived first at 6:30 p.m. Mom gave me this weird tight hug and immediately asked where Megan was. "She's upstairs getting ready," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Ed showed up last at 6:45. He had this cocky smile that made me want to punch him on sight. He gave me one of those bro hugs, slapping my back like we were still close. I had to use every ounce of self-control not to react. Megan came downstairs in this blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary. We all sat down for dinner. I stayed calm, making small talk about work, the weather, Dad's golf game. Mom kept glancing nervously between Megan and Ed. Megan barely touched her food, just pushed it around her plate. After the main course, Dad raised his glass. "So, what's this good news you wanted to share with us?" I smiled, reached under the table and pulled out the manila envelope. "Actually, I do have something to share," I said, sliding the envelope across the table to Megan. "These are divorce papers." The room went dead silent. Megan's face went white. "What are you talking about?" she whispered, not opening the envelope. "I know everything, Megan, about you and Ed, about the baby that might be his, about Mom helping you hide it all." I kept my voice steady, even though I was raging inside. Mom gasped dramatically. "How dare you accuse them of such a thing? Megan would never." I cut her off by pulling out the second envelope and handing it to my dad. "These are emails between Mom and Megan discussing the affair and how to hide it from me. Been going on for at least 3 months." Dad's hands shook as he started reading. The color drained from his face. Ed stood up suddenly, knocking over his chair. "You had no right to go through her emails," he shouted, like that was the real crime here. "I think I had every right to know my wife is screwing my brother and might be pregnant with his kid," I said, still keeping my voice level. "How long were you planning to hide that, Megan? Were you just going to pass it off as mine?" Megan burst into tears. "It's not what you think," she sobbed. "I love you. It was a mistake. A 3-month mistake with my brother, while my mother covered for you." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "And now you're pregnant." Mom tried to reach for the papers Dad was reading, but he held them away from her. "Catherine, what is this?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Did you help them hide this from Josh?" My mother's face had gone from fake shock to panic. "Megan, you told me you were sure it was Josh's," she said suddenly, throwing Megan under the bus to save herself. Dad looked up from the emails, his face hard as stone. "Catherine, did you know about this? Did you help them hide this from our son?" His voice was quiet but deadly serious. Mom started crying, trying to play victim. "I was just trying to protect the family. Ed made a mistake, but breaking up the family wouldn't help anyone." Ed, the smug piece of shit, actually scoffed. "Come on. It's not that big a deal. Megan and I connected. It happens. Josh is always working anyway, barely pays attention to her." Something in me snapped. I stood up, walked around the table and punched him square in the nose. There was a satisfying crack and blood immediately started pouring down his face. He stumbled back, knocking over a side table. Mom screamed, rushing to Ed. "Josh, what is wrong with you?" Dad stood up then, looking more angry than I'd ever seen him. "Enough, Catherine. Our son just found out his wife and brother betrayed him in the worst possible way and you're worried about Ed's nose." He pointed at Ed. "Get out of this house now." Ed held his bleeding nose, glaring at all of us. "This isn't over. You're going to regret this," he spat before storming out the front door. Mom tried to follow him, but Dad grabbed her arm. "You stay right here. We have a lot to discuss about your role in all this." Megan was still crying at the table. "Josh, please. We can work through this. I'm so sorry. I made a terrible mistake." I turned to her, feeling nothing but cold contempt. "I want a paternity test if you're keeping this baby. I need to know if it's mine, and either way, we're done." I handed the cashier's check to my dad. "This is to pay back what Ed borrowed recently. I figured you should get your money back before everything falls apart." Dad looked at the check, then back at me with sad eyes. "Son, I had no idea any of this was happening." Mom was frantically trying to explain herself, saying she just wanted to protect Ed, that she knew it was wrong but thought it would just be a phase, that she didn't want to hurt me. Dad wasn't having any of it. He told her to get her coat. They were leaving. After my parents left, Megan and I sat in silence for what felt like hours. Finally, she spoke. "What happens now?" "Now. You pack a bag and leave? The house is mine, it's not community property. You've got until tomorrow to figure out where you're going, but it won't be here." She nodded slowly, then went upstairs to pack. I sat at the dining table, surrounded by the wreckage of what I thought was my life, feeling strangely calm. The worst had happened, and I had survived it. Everything from here on out would be rebuilding. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyer meetings and paperwork. Megan moved out to stay with a friend, not with Ed, interestingly enough. I had changed the locks the day after the dinner. The paternity test was scheduled once it was safe to perform one. Megan agreed without argument. I think part of her was hoping the baby was mine, thinking that might change things. Then, 2 weeks after the dinner, I got served with a misdemeanor assault charge, courtesy of Ed, who had the nerve to report the punch to the police. My lawyer, Sarah, wasn't overly concerned. First offense, no weapon, and a situation with emotional provocation. Not a legal defense per se, but potentially relevant for sentencing. She made it clear the court wouldn't ignore the assault, but context could work in my favor. 3 months later, we had our hearing. Ed showed up with his arm around Mom, playing the victim like a pro. I came with Sarah and 2 character witnesses from work, including Chester, who spoke to my history of professionalism and restraint. The judge reviewed the incident, heard testimony about the circumstances leading up to it, and accepted some contextual evidence regarding the affair, not as justification but as background. In the end, the court found me guilty of simple assault and imposed a $500 fine, noting that it was an isolated act in response to a deeply personal betrayal. The judge didn't mince words, saying I had let emotions override better judgment, but also implied that Ed was fortunate things hadn't escalated further. Mom looked mortified. Ed glared like he expected applause. I considered it $500 well spent. Dad called me the day the assault charges were filed. He was furious, not at me, but at Ed. He told me he'd already taken steps to remove Ed from his will entirely. When Mom found out, she apparently had a complete meltdown, threatening to leave Dad if he went through with it. I told her she was welcome to leave, but she should know I'd make sure she got nothing if she chose Ed over our family, Dad told me. That shut her up pretty quick. My dad's finances are no joke. 30 years at his engineering firm, smart investments, real estate holdings. No wonder Mom freaked out when Dad threatened to cut Ed out. Mom's true colors showed through this whole thing. She'd raised Ed to think he could do no wrong, and now she was facing the consequences of creating such an entitled jerk. Dad said she was still moping around the house, crying about how her family was falling apart, but at least she'd stopped defending Ed openly. Dad came by the house a week after the dinner. He brought his tools and helped me repaint the living room and master bedroom, erasing any hint of Megan's decorating choices. We didn't talk much while we worked, but when we finished, he put his hand on my shoulder and said, "You're handling this better than I would have at your age. I'm proud of you." That meant more than he knew. I went back to work after a week off. Chester had told the team I was dealing with family issues and needed space. When I returned, he'd moved my desk to a different floor from Ed's department. Smart move. I found out later that Chester had also put Ed on a performance improvement plan, citing ethical concerns in his file. Technically, sleeping with your brother's wife isn't a fireable offense, but Chester found ways to make Ed's work life difficult without crossing any HR lines. Megan's religious parents found out about everything from my dad, who felt they deserved to know what their daughter had done. They were devastated. Her dad called me personally to apologize, saying they had raised her better than this. They told Megan she wasn't welcome in their home until she found her way back to God. Pretty harsh, but I couldn't blame them for being disappointed. Ed and Megan eventually ended up renting an apartment together, though from what I heard they were far from happy. Mom was their only visitor, sneaking over when she thought Dad wouldn't notice. I cut all 3 of them out of my life completely, changed my number, blocked their emails, the works. Dad was the only family member I still talked to. The paternity test results came back. The baby wasn't mine. In a way, it was a relief, a clean break with no biological ties to maintain. The divorce proceedings went smoothly after that, with the infidelity proven and the paternity test confirming it wasn't my child. Since we lived in a fault state, Megan got almost nothing. I kept the house, my retirement accounts, and most of our assets. She didn't even fight it. I think she knew she had no grounds to. Our friends mostly took my side, especially after they learned the full story. A few tried to stay neutral, saying there are two sides to every story. But they faded away pretty quickly. My real friends stepped up, invited me over for dinner, checked in regularly, didn't let me isolate myself. I threw myself into work, took on a new project rebuilding a major insurance company's claims processing system. The 70-hour weeks kept my mind off everything. Chester started grooming me for a technical director position, faster advancement than I'd expected, but I was ready for it. I also joined a gym, hired a trainer who kicked my ass 3 times a week. Lost the 15 pounds I'd gained during my marriage, put on some muscle, started running again, did a half marathon 6 months after the divorce. Dating was the last thing on my mind for a long time. Friends tried to set me up, but I wasn't ready. Trust issues don't disappear overnight. 6 months after everything went down, I was in a good place. The divorce was finalized, the assault charges were settled with a small fine, and I'd been promoted at work. The house was finally feeling like mine again after I renovated and got rid of everything that reminded me of Megan. I completely gutted the master bathroom, new tile, new fixtures, new everything, converted the guest bedroom into a home gym, built a custom entertainment center in the living room. The house became a project that kept my hands busy and my mind focused. By the time I was done, it looked nothing like the place where Megan and I had lived together. My finances were looking better than ever. The promotion came with a $20,000 salary bump plus stock options. I maxed out my 401k contributions, started a separate investment account, and even began looking at rental properties as potential income sources. At 2008, I was in a better financial position than most guys my age, especially without a wife draining my resources. Then, out of nowhere, I got a text from Mom asking to meet at a diner downtown, said it was important, and she needed to talk to me in person. I agreed to meet her during my lunch break, making it clear I only had 30 minutes. When I arrived at the diner, I immediately regretted coming. Mom wasn't alone. Megan was sitting next to her, looking exhausted, with a baby carrier on the booth seat. I almost walked out, but Mom spotted me and waved frantically. I went over and sat down across from them, not bothering with greetings. "What is this?" I asked, looking directly at Mom. She had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Your father doesn't know I'm here," she admitted, "but I needed to talk to you. Ed's been arrested." That got my attention. "Arrested for what?" "He was caught embezzling money from the company, and he also got a DUI last week," Mom said, her voice cracking. "He's facing serious jail time. I need your help to bail him out." I just stared at her in disbelief. "You want me to bail out the brother who slept with my wife, got her pregnant, and then pressed assault charges against me? Are you insane?" Looking closer, I could see Mom's designer handbag was scraped and worn, her manicure chipped. Dad must have cut off her spending. Good for him. Megan spoke up then, her voice small. "Ed left us right after Lily was born," she said, gesturing to the baby. "He said he wasn't ready to be a father. He was drinking a lot. Sometimes he'd get angry, push me around. I felt nothing, not satisfaction that their relationship had imploded, not pity for her situation. Just nothing." "He hit her, Josh," Mom said, like that would somehow make me care. "And now she's alone with the baby, no job, no support." I looked at Megan. "And what do you want from me?" She started crying. "I don't know what to do. My parents won't talk to me. I can't work with a newborn. Ed drained our bank account before he got arrested. I thought maybe you could help, just until I get back on my feet." I sat back and looked at these two women who had betrayed me, now asking me for help because the guy they chose over me had proven to be exactly the piece of shit I always knew he was. Mom nodded. "Family helps family, Josh." I almost laughed. "Where was that family loyalty when you were helping them hide their affair from me? When you convinced Megan to try to pass off this baby as mine?" "I made a mistake," Mom said, tears welling up. "I thought I was protecting everyone." "No, you were protecting your favorite," I said flatly. "And now you're still choosing him, even after everything he's done." Mom leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Your father's being unreasonable. He's frozen all our accounts. I can't access any money without his approval. He's talking about divorce if I don't cut ties with Ed completely." "Sounds reasonable to me," I said. "Dad's finally standing up for himself." I stood up, taking out my wallet. I dropped one card on the table, for a women's shelter. This place can help you, Megan. I won't. As for Ed, he can rot in jail for all I care. I looked at Mom. Don't contact me again. Tell Dad I miss him, and he's welcome to call me anytime. I walked out without looking back. In my car, I sat for a moment, expecting to feel something, anger, vindication, maybe even pity. But nope. They weren't my problem anymore. I'd rebuilt my life from the ashes they'd left, and I was doing just fine without them. That night, Dad called me. He'd figured out where Mom had gone, and why. He apologized for her behavior and assured me he had no intention of helping Ed either. We talked for almost an hour about work, about the house, about the new woman I'd been seeing. Normal father-son stuff. Then, months later, I heard through mutual friends that Ed had taken a plea deal, 18 months for embezzlement. Megan had moved back to her hometown, apparently reconciled with her parents enough that they were helping with the baby. As for me, the promotion at work turned into a director position, overseeing a team of 15 developers. I bought a rental property that's already generating positive cash flow. I'm planning a 2-week hiking trip through Yellowstone next summer, something I've always wanted to do but never made time for. Life isn't perfect, but I'm moving forward, and I know now that I'm stronger than I ever thought possible. Some days, that's enough.